our people, they were more than just folks who were enslaved. They were so much more. But in order to show that they were so much more, we have to deal with the condition of American slavery.
With the Underground Railroad, what do you hope that people are left with when they're done with this series?
I think when people watch the series, I hope that, you know, at the end of every episode, we have these contemporary songs that play, which was something I didn't plan on doing. It kind of just happened while we were making the show. I felt this kinship with the characters. I felt this very direct connection to them. And the one that unlocked it was at the end of the first Indiana episode when Cora walks out the door. I felt like, because it's like that episode is very romantic, and it's almost like this idea of these two people who are in love, who should be in love, but she can't allow herself yet to receive that love. And it just reminded me of that groove theory track, Hey You. And I thought, oh shit, Amel LaRue in 1995 is directly singing towards this character Cora, you know, in a pre-Civil War America. I thought, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that so beautiful? Because we often struggle to find a connection to these folks. I think because, you know, through the trauma and the pain and the shame, we're afraid to get close to their experience because it brings up so much pain. I think in doing that, it kind of robs us of this connection to them. And so with these contemporary songs, I kept finding, oh my God, we're, you know, because of what they endured, because they created the space for us to grow and proliferate and find the language to speak to our own lives, we're kind of in communion with them. And I think when people watch the show, again, because the legacy of American slavery is so painful, it's so traumatic, and that pain and trauma often elicit shame. I want to take that shame and I just want to smash it. I just want to smash the shit out of it because in making the show, it was very clear to me. We had this guidance counselor on set, this woman named Miss Kim, Miss Kim White, and Miss Kim, they call her guidance counselor. She was a damn therapist, and she would just be walking around set, and she would just see somebody, hey, honey, come on over here, let me talk to you, um, and she'd pull you aside and talk to you. And as we were making the show, I assumed that because we had huge background cast and almost an exclusively black principal cast, I thought I'm just going to see her pulling black folks over left and right, left and right. And I realized she kept the white crew, you know, these people who are working on the show, you know, they're witnessing these things day in and day out. They kept coming to her, seeking her out to pull her aside. And then I realized, oh, the part of that is the shame is not ours, it's theirs. You know, and I think in a similar way, you know, we associate these images with trauma, pain, and shame. I think the shame was not our ancestors either. It was always theirs. It was always the perpetrators. And I would hope that in watching the show, that because I don't think the show can solve everything. You know, in my little director statement, you know, I talk about watching Birth of a Nation as a film student and also watching Schindler's List. And sometimes the math just works out where I think 50 years after World War II, Steven Spielberg made Schindler's List, and 50 years after the Civil War, D.W. Griffith made Birth of a Nation. Two very different treatments um, of, uh, of Mr. Spielberg's ancestors and Mr. Griffith's ancestors. And what I like to say with this show is, I didn't start this shit, but I'm gonna finish it. And and I think that this show, just like this show stands on the shoulders of Roots and Mr. Parks' film and Steve's film, I think someone's going to come behind me and make work that'll stand on the shoulders of this thing, and eventually, we'll fill in this cavity because our people, they were more than just folks who were enslaved. They were so much more. But in order to show that they were so much more, we have to deal with the condition of American slavery. You know, we have to show it, but then also show everything else about their lives that they preserved within it. So I don't know. That's my piece, man. Again, normally with a feature film, the movie premieres at a festival. I do a Q&A. I do a lot of that. I'm going all over. So I'm finding this conversation. Ain't nobody seen this shit, Jamel. So you and me, we having this conversation now. It's almost like I'm in a booth, you know what I'm saying? Like the dudes do in the 90s. And I'm kind of like, You know, that's what's happening right now.
Okay. No, I mean, but that's, I always think that's the beauty of podcasts. They present a certain level of intimacy
Mhm.
so that people can really understand and hear
I
the
mean, look,
answer.
I'll say this: there are images in this show that I don't think, and it's. You asked the question, so I have to answer it. But I don't like talking about my own work this way. That's what I think. What's beautiful about making films is it's not just my work. There's so many people. The credits on this show are long as hell. There are images in this show that we just haven't seen. And these images take place within the context of American slavery. There is an enslaved man in this show who was sewing a doll for the children he did not conceive. And we just assume that black men don't do that now, and certainly didn't do that then. Yet they absolutely did. Who you think raised these kids? Families were broken and separated and just placed on these plantations, and then they built new families. Who raised these damn kids, Jamel? How are you and I here? Somebody had to raise those damn kids. There's just so many things in the show, so many images, and I just hope that those images. Again, I talk about cavities. I think there's a cavity in what we know of or what we think of our ancestors, and I hope the show fills in a lot of those cavities.
Um, Making a hard pivot to something a little lighter, but yet,
Please, please.
yes, a little lighter, but and something you're working on, but deeply as meaningful is you are working on a Lion King prequel, correct?
I am, yeah.
Yes, right. This is the story of Mufasa, right?
Hmm.
So, it's one thing when you touch literary works as you have done, touch some great literary works with if Beale Street, could talk. And even when you did my favorite book, Their Eyes Were Watching God, when you did that for Harpo Studios. Now you're touching something extremely, extremely beloved in the
Yeah.
Lion King. So, what is that process like compared to some of the other things you've worked on?
It's a different process. One, I'm not the writer on this, and I've always been the writer, and so that's been kind of cool. It's nice. It's allowing me to access this other part of my brain. This dude Jeff Nathanson. This wasn't something that Disney was planning to do. Jeff, just like a lot of people, just loved the characters, loved the story, and thought, if I wanted to know anything else about this world, it would be the story of how did Mufasa become Mufasa. Which then you unpack that, how does a king become a king? And it's funny because everybody's watching The Crown right now, or a lot of people are watching The Crown, and that's a situation where how do you become a king? Oh, you're born the king, you're born the queen, and yet that doesn't actually. If we assume that a king, and we've seen Mufasa is a great king, what made him that way? And so when the project came to me, and I thought, oh shit, I saw this film at least 150 times as a kid because I was raising nephews. You just put on that VCR and boom, real chill. Um, the fact that there is something to explore here, and for me, it's always about here's what we assume about a subject or a person, and here is what it actually is. Let me reveal the real life behind it. And it's crazy to talk about real life when we're talking about talking lions in this film that people know so very well. But that's what it is for me. And then it's also about brotherhood, and in a certain way, um, about this idea. Again, a lot of stuff I do is related about building a family. Out of the detritus of what life throws at you. And I think people assume Mufasa arrived to us one way, but we're going to show that no, he became who he is in a quite different way. And now I got to get deep. On the flip side, there's only been like 5 movies made in this style in the history of the world. Maybe by the time this film comes out, there'll be 10. This whole virtual production kind of thing, and oftentimes, just like I like to talk about jazz. Jazz is this really beautiful thing that happened when finally the instruments, were accessible to us. Because those instruments existed forever. And then once I'm talking about folks like you and me, Ms. Hill, once we got a hold of them, this whole new art form proliferated. Um, but typically, we're like the last ones to get access to these tools. And now, after this film, nobody will be able to say, oh, yeah, a young black indie director. I don't know if he can handle or she can handle this virtual production. That's a whole new thing. It's like, no, that shouldn't be done. Barry Jenkins did it. Why can't XYZ? So that's the other part of it too.
Well, I know a lot of people will definitely be looking forward to that, as will I, because I think now telling the backstories of these things is something that people have a much more open mind about. I
Hmm.
know people get a little touchy when you do a direct remake of a classic, right? But when
Hmm.
you tell backstories, it's a little different. We were talking about Ryan Coogler earlier. I think that's what made Creed
Hmm.
such a success, right? Is like we're talking another part of a life of a character we loved in a series, a movie, series that we love. So it
Yeah.
made it that much
Yeah,
better.
I think it's important too, especially for young folks, to understand how great people become great. They
Hmm.
assume they arrive whole and intact, and that's just not the case. Also, too, I'll say this: it's a very beautiful way of creating images. I mean, just absolutely beautiful, and I am here for it.